What else is your
Let us proceed here. Our first reader is our founding member, Dave Waldrop.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Woo, I was AWOL last month, and I apologize. That may sound weird to say that, because if I'm not here, I miss it. But I haven't missed but two of these things. I want to read two short pieces. The first one's called Trump, a Walking Contradiction. This is pretty good writing. Legendary singer-songwriter Chris Christopherson wrote, "He's a poet, he's a picker, he's a prophet, he's a pusher, he's a pilgrim and a preacher and a problem when he's stoned. He's a walking contradiction, partly truth and partly fiction, taking every wrong direction on his lonely way back home." What these poetic words show us is that most of us are multi-talented, or at least have multiple interests. We talk about talents and interests as though they're separate parts of us. The reality is that they're not. We separate them in our minds: politics, religion, art, engineering, trees, water, and so forth, in order to discuss them intelligently and somehow forget to put them back together. Native Americans had a more holistic view of themselves and their environment. Chief Seattle is credited with saying, "All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the children of the earth." So for Donald Trump and his supporters to claim he is something other than a politician in Washington is really ridiculous. He is part politician, whether he wants to admit it or not. Why would anyone campaign for the highest political office in America if he or she were not by nature a politician? Why would reasonable Americans expect to have people who are not politicians occupying political offices? As Christopherson has suggested, we may have a walking contradiction in the White House. Is Donald Trump too much of a walking contradiction to ever be effective in the office he currently holds? No applause, please.
Just not.
Unless you just absolutely have to.
I thought you were going to, you wanted to talk about,
This was called racial bullying. I've been trying to write some of the stuff that I did while I was coaching and counseling and driving school buses and stuff for a number of years. And this is a short piece. Probably take about an hour and a half. It's not likely that we will ever live in a world that is characterized by an absence of bullying. I've never been anywhere that I didn't see some form of it. My daddy was actually a bully. We never talked to his family members about the things he did that were in reality nothing less than bullying. We tried various things as individual family members and tried some as a unit in order to manage the bullier. Throughout my life, I have identified with those who are bullied and hope that the one inclined to bully would learn to fulfill his or her need for self-respect and self-esteem through means that are beneficial to others. I believe that most people who are bullied wish, hope, and sometimes pray that the bully will leave them alone. However, I've also come to believe that ignoring a bully will seldom produce the desired results. In other words, the victim of bullying must do something, indirectly or directly, to alter the behavior of the one bullying. One of the most effective ways to deal with a bully is for people to give the bully attention and respect as much as possible. Sometimes it's even advisable to lay it on thick and heavy. Depriving a bully of respect is withholding what he or she desperately wants and needs. This method may take a while to offset the deep need for respect that the bully has. There are other ways to alter bullying behavior as well. I witnessed one incident that illustrates this reality one year at Cullowhee Valley School. A new 8th grade boy moved into our school. He was black. He's stocky built and strong in appearance, the type of youngster I liked as a fullback and or linebacker on my football team. I soon learned he would only be at CVS for 1 year while his guardian uncle completed his master's degree in chemistry at Western Carolina University. One day I was in a classroom relieving the regular teacher. I watched the white boy sneak his boot up the edge of the boy's desk and hold it there, annoying the hell out of the black boy. The black boy merely gave him a cold stare as though telling him, "I won't tolerate much more from you." There were two other white boys who had apparently urged the one guy on to aggravate that black boy. The next day, I asked the white antagonist to come talk with me. I told him I'd witnessed his annoying behavior and the tolerance displayed by the black boy. I explained the two reasons for our conversation. One was that the black boy had every right by law to be in our school, and that furthermore, I'd like to see the boys welcome him and get along with his classmates. The other reason was to warn the boy that although no severe reaction had come from the new student on the one occasion, I felt that he would retaliate soon if the annoying didn't stop. Only a couple of days later, a group of students hurried the white boy into the office area with a rag on the top of his head, slowing the bleeding from a wound. I soon learned that the new black boy had retaliated with a ferocious tackle that resulted in a serious head injury. Luckily, the school nurse got the bleeding stopped and treated the wound as needed. I later went to advise the assistant principal in charge of discipline of what I had witnessed earlier, what set this up. Following school policy, each of the boys was suspended for fighting. When they returned, there was no more bullying directed at the new black boy. He had stood his ground in a way he knew how to. Unfortunately, the white boys involved, directly and indirectly, never made any effort to accept the black boy into our school. But the action taken at least made life at school safer for the only black boy in a class of 60 students. The boy was otherwise accepted by most other students in our 8th grade. It turned out to be an ugly incident, but not a continual social problem during that school year. Good story now. Hey, thanks a lot.
You're a better man than I am, Dave. I always kind of wish my bullies would die.
That's part of the praying process.
Okay, our next reader is Avram Friedman.
All right.
Well, thank you. I feel privileged to be reading before all of you, accomplished writers. I'm going to read from a book I actually started writing about 20 years ago, maybe 25 years ago. It's called The Truth About Plumbing. I used to, for about 25 years, I was a plumber. And this book, I wrote a little bit and then I stopped writing it, and it's been 25 years and I haven't gotten too far, but I'm starting to write in it again now. And maybe reading to this group will encourage me to continue, I hope so. It's the way I would describe this book is a little bit autobiography, a little bit about the philosophy of plumbing. And it's a little bit of an instructional book on plumbing as well, but the instruction is embedded in storytelling. So I kind of had some fun with it, and I'm going to write, this is the foreword to the book, and my intention is to read this. You'll have to stop me. I'm not sure when my time is up, but I'm not sure I'm going to get it all in this session, but I'll continue reading this and subsequent chapters in following weeks as well. So the foreword is called One Day Plumbing, which kind of gets you into the mode of this book, I think, I hope. I'm a plumber in the small southern Appalachian mountain community of Sylva, North Carolina. It's Thursday night in the middle of January, and my friend Lewis, a local attorney, calls to ask if I can help him move a water heater tomorrow at his house so he can remodel his laundry room. Lewis is a do-it-yourself kind of guy, but I explained to him that I already have several jobs lined up for tomorrow, and it will be difficult to find the time to help him. He suggests that if he helps me with some of my work in the morning, we can save enough time so that I can help him in the afternoon. Okay, it's a deal, I relent. Friday morning arrives and my alarm fails to sound. The phone rings at 8 o'clock. You ready to go yet? Asked Lewis. Yes, I'll be there in 15 minutes to pick you up, I reply. I stumble into the bathroom, splash some cold water on my face, stub my toe on the bed frame, returning to get dressed, struggle into my heavy insulated coveralls, and go outside into the 18-degree mountain air to start my van up. I press on the door lock of the van, and it is frozen stiff. With the heel of my palm, I ram it, only to find that the door gaskets are stuck solid to the door frame of the vehicle. All the doors are the same. The weather had been warm and rainy for the past few days, and then there was a quick freeze last night. With a surge of rage, I tear the driver's door open and get in. The truck mercifully starts. With no problem, in 5 minutes I'm at Lewis's house. There will be no breakfast this morning. Our first job is at Sally Delano's house. She sees water coming from the bottom of her water heater. Could there be a problem, she asks. Sally lives about 2 miles up a steep mountain road, and her water heater is located in the waist-high crawl space under her house. Lewis and I, both in our late 40s, as I said, this was 25 years ago. Sally is in her early 70s. She is armed with a homeowner's manual and begins delivering a dissertation on water heaters and their inherent problems. Carefully checking out the possibilities, I pronounce that her water heater is leaking and she needs a new water heater. She goes through her manual and asks every conceivable question to ascertain that I am not prematurely coming to this conclusion. Finally, she relents and gives us permission to proceed. The first things to do when replacing a water heater is turn off the electricity and drain the tank so the old unit can be removed. But Sally's unit is located in the lowest part of her house and therefore cannot be drained with a hose. So the situation dictates a slow and arduous process of emptying out the tank one partial bucket at a time. An hour later, with the tank 3/4 empty and still brutally heavy, we decide to go for it and begin removal. Because of the limited height of the crawl space, we cannot stand up. So in a crouching position, we push, pull, struggle, and manually grunt the tank out from under the house. Our middle-aged back somehow survived this ordeal. The entire time I'm thinking and reminding myself that Lewis is a lawyer. What would happen if, God forbid, he sustained an injury while working with me? A cold front is bearing down on the mountains and the outside temperature has dropped to 15 degrees at 10:30 in the morning. I tell Sally we'll be back in about an hour. She says that she has a doctor's appointment at 11 and she'd like to take a shower first. Sorry, Sally. With the old tank removed, we have to get in the van and travel 30 miles to Waynesville to pick up a new tank. In Waynesville, a new superstore Lowe's building supply has opened and we pull in. This was before the Lowe's was located in Sylva. There was one that had just opened in Waynesville and there was one in Franklin. The store is a virtual Disneyland of building materials, tools, and household supplies, and upon entering the huge automatic electric doors, we are immediately hypnotized into an overwhelming need to see everything there is. Our shopping carts begin to fill as we wander aimlessly through the aisles until we inadvertently find the plumbing department and remember why we came. I snap into a serious, determined state. state of mind and pick out the water heater, a set of flexible copper water heater connectors, and a good quality 3/4 inch ball valve. Why the flexible connectors, asks Lewis. They're easy to use and I've never had one leak, I say. Well, why the ball valve, asks Lewis. The gate valve on the old water heater was worn. Ball valves are more resilient and easier to operate, I respond. We succeed in leaving the store with a minimum of further diversion and head back to Sylva, having already spent more money than I would make today. The sky has clouded over and a few snowflakes begin to fall. I turn on my headlights, as the law now requires, although the daylight is bright. Halfway up the steep road to Sally's house, I discover that the van's brakes are hardly responding to the pedal. I briefly debate with myself whether or not I should mention this fact to Lewis, and decide that honesty is the best policy. Lewis responds, "At least we're going uphill. It would be worse if we were on the way down." I nod in agreement, wondering to myself how we will make the return trip. We arrive at Sally's house and, without stopping, turn into her driveway, slowly coasting to a gradual halt. Lewis hops out. "What's this steam coming from under the hood? It smells like antifreeze." The snow has stopped, but the temperature has dropped to 12 degrees at noon. The wind makes it feel colder. "Let's deal with the brakes later, after we install the new water heater," I say. "I've canceled my doctor's appointment," Sally greets us. With a heroic effort in reverse of the process we accomplished earlier, the new tank is put in place. The old gate valve is indeed leaking, and I proudly produce the new ball valve, which I had the wisdom and forethought to buy in Waynesville. I install the new ball valve. I hook up the new leak-proof flexible copper water heater connectors in a most efficient and professional manner. We turn on the water to fill the tank and test it under pressure. Sally joins us under the house, manual in hand. "I didn't realize the new connectors would be so expensive," she remarks. The tank fills. It is under pressure. All seems well. I begin to wrap the pipes with insulation when suddenly I spot a tiny droplet of water coming from the tank end of one of the leak-proof flexible copper connectors. I touch it with my finger. Lewis and Sally stare intently. One of Sally's eyebrows is raised considerably higher. My time is done.
I'm going to take 2 minutes to see which windows have screens and open them. There are many cookies and some wine and some apple juice and some water. If anyone feels a little peaked, this is the moment to see what we can do.
It's too warm in here. That's a great way
It is a touch warm in here. Thanks to global warming, I feel sure that screenless windows maybe it's best not to open them. Thank you, Zoe.
I can get it.
Can I get a closer picture of you?
I thought maybe I was just bored.
From my experience,
I can also bring cookies to anybody who would like one. And
A
wine.
closer picture of this.
What are you gonna do?
Oh, I'll probably put it on my Facebook page. What's your name again?
Dave Walker.
Dave Long.
And check with my agent. Have your agent get one to my agent.
Dave's agent is kind of aggressive.
Well, I think the people who follow my stories will be interested in the kind of folks that are reading it and who are writing. One's a coach and a plumber. That is great.
That's
That is
pretty good.
absolutely great. That is fantastic.
Our next reader is going to be Matt Nelson. Been in the area maybe 5-6 years. Go to it, Matt.
Yes.
Oh, right then.
Right.
Give me a second. Okay, this thing is going to be a little bit more, a little different than what I have been sharing. This one is the idea just kind of pops into my head, you know, it's kind of like a what if kind of deal, because it does relate to the idea of bullying, and there is one way you can kind of deal with them, it said, but the question is how far, it said, will the consequences go afterwards? Okay, there are parts of my jobs I really hate. My name is Rick, and I'm a lawyer, so I can guess when my life isn't glorious. I deal in civil cases like divorce, but one day I was saddled with a case no one wanted because it involved attempted murder and children. When my boss hadn't lost a bet, I said that the firm would have never heard more about this case outside of what was going to be in the paper. I said, but fate is a cruel mistress. Oops. My client was named Kyle, and he was charged with attempted murder of a girl that was a local bully in middle school. The monster's name was Rhonda, and she was more of the troll under the bridge than a girl. Said, with her being nearly 6 feet tall, with a large forehead, chin, and cheekbones. I swear that this person was fed steroid-laced formula growing up, leading to the abominable product today. As in many oversized monsters, this one demanded proper tributes of nourishment, and this is where Kyle messed up. Poor little Rhonda had 2 nasty allergies to peanuts and strawberries, 2 common foods for children, and these were the so-called murder weapons. Kyle was babysitting his nephew Jake and hadn't heard about the restrictions on Rhonda the tyrant, and proceeded to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich when Jake woke up late. Things were fine until lunchtime. Then Rhonda grabbed the tainted sandwich and inhaled it. Within a split second, everyone saw the monster swell up as she tried to gasp for air. At first, Jake seemed like he was some kind of hero, but the faculty had to take action. When questioned about the sandwich, Jake said that his out-of-town uncle made a quick lunch and didn't know about Rhonda or her allergies. Said there were several relatives that had made less than appealing meals without knowing the consequences. However, none of them involved any fatal ingredients. Well, this was a simple accident. The evil gaze of Rhonda, even more disturbing mother, meant that charges had to be filed. Rhonda's mother, Bertha, looked like she was a hybrid of an alcoholic mixed with a Jewish woman who had aged poorly, that had ate Mama June, and proved that you are what you eat. And I'm sorry if that offended by that, but I had to create a monster that was very realistic. It said believable. It said, with an appearance like this, no one wanted to argue with another beast or be eaten. So Kyle hired me as his attorney. Said, while this wasn't a difficult request, as anyone wants to see bullies taken down, send a message, the influence of Bertha had reached the ears of Judge Mary Jo Baxter, and this spelled doom for anyone with a Y chromosome. Judge Mary Jo was an absolute bitch, and said when it came to prosecuting male plaintiffs, and even the other female lawyers loathed her. The reason behind this ire was that Mary Jo believed that men existed to serve women, and that any offense against women needed to be severely punished. Even if a woman did something horrible like steal millions of dollars to cover up an affair with a corrupt corporation, Mary Jo supported evil women over male saints. I had only been under the gaze of this judge once, and I won the case against the woman, so the deck was stacked against me. The trial wasn't so bad, despite the looting from the judge and the certified perjury that came from Bertha. Most of what she said involved her daughter. Involved how her daughter was a beautiful angel, who got along with everyone. This got a lot of gags and rude remarks from the audience, that were quickly shot down by Mary Jo. Rhonda also tried to put on a good show about her popularity, but this also received very negative feedback. It was like Rhonda and Bertha wanted attention for some odd reason, and they knew that if they lied, then people paid more attention. As for Kyle, we managed to prove that he had no knowledge of Rhonda from various phone records and social media outlets. Kyle lived several states away and rarely visited family, so being out of touch was a natural part of that, creating a little common ground. It was this isolation that convinced the jury to acquit Kyle. Bertha was enraged by this verdict and proceeded to attack anyone in sight with her darling little Rhonda at her side. Mary Jo finally woke up and had them detained. I was heading back to my office when Kyle's parents, when Jake's parents, said stop me to give thanks. I told them that this case could have happened to anyone, and that a peanut butter and jelly sandwich can be a deadly weapon to the right people. This made me wonder if the parents had intentionally left out the ingredients of doom for the poor uncle to find, not knowing other effects. My parents walked away before I could ask him this, and I knew that they had, so that 2 monsters were exposed and weren't able to hurt anyone else. Once I returned to my office, I thought about what this case could do to other parents with bullied children. More could use food to exploit allergies and religious nerves instead of dealing strong blows. And I knew that I'd be called on to give my opinion. The only thing I could think of is adding some of the allergens to the bread for a quick reaction, but no chance of immediate death. Thank you. I've never seen anyone with a peanut or strawberry allergy. They are some of the nastiest ones you can have. And you know, if just being in the same room is enough to cause a reaction, it gets the message around.
Thank you, Matt. Our next reader is Newt Smith, and whose most recent book of poems, I believe, is the Camino Poems.
Oh, thank you. I'm not going to read from it. I'm going to do something different from what I usually do. Years ago, got involved with Buddhism, and ended up telling a story to a bunch of kids. And what I've done now is start a book, and this is the first chapter of a book, and the name of the book is Tenzin Soto Brown Gets in Trouble. My name is Tenzin Soto Brown. I know, everybody asks, where did you get that name? From my birth certificate, I say. What's yours? When they say their name, I repeat it 3 times and then break out laughing and say, your name is funny too. I know that isn't nice, but say your name over and over and see how funny it sounds. It's my name, get over it. My parents are kind of weird. Every day they go to different rooms and just sit there by themselves with their eyes closed, not watching TV, reading emails, or even listening to music. My dad is a Tibetan Buddhist, but my mom is a Soto Zen Buddhist. I don't exactly know what the difference is, or even what Buddhism is, except that it was started by this guy in Nepal or India some 2,600 years ago. So when I was born, my dad picked my first name, Tenzin, after the first name of the Dalai Lama. You know, that guy in the news who is always smiling? My mom picked Soto because it's the kind of Zen Buddhism that she follows. It's a real pain because I have to keep explaining my name whenever I visit. Sometimes my mom takes me with her when she goes to the Zen Center. She usually takes books for me to read while she's inside. She doesn't want me playing games or watching videos on my tablet while she's meditating. I wish I could watch Kung Fu Panda or Mulan or Doctor Strange. I mean, Doctor Strange actually takes place in Nepal or India or someplace like that where all that Buddhism started, I think. But no, she wants me to read books while she's there. I like books, okay, but sometimes I get bored reading, especially the kind of books she checks out for me. Today she was in a hurry and all she brought were books I had already read lots of times. Tenzin, please don't get into any trouble while I'm sitting, she said. You can look around the garden and read, but don't mess with anything. I'll be back here in a little while. Yeah, sure. She always says that when it's going to be a long time. After a while, I got really bored. So I wandered around this nice garden at the Zen Center. There was a pool with rocks in it. I love to throw rocks. Mostly I throw rocks in the water because you don't break anything in the water. Once I was throwing rocks at a little Buddha in our backyard when I accidentally threw it too hard and broke the kitchen window of our neighbor's house. I ran inside and pretended nothing had happened. But Mr. Snyder saw me throw the rock. He knocked on the door and told my mom what had happened. For a whole week I had to rake Mr. Snyder's yard. So now I throw rocks mostly at water. There was a funny carved bridge over the Zen pond in the Zen Center. It looked like it would be fun to throw rocks off that bridge into the pool. The first one just plopped and sank, and then the next three hit right in the center of the pool, and they made a cool splash. I decided a bigger rock would make it a bigger splash, and so I got some of the big rocks at the edge of the water, and I got bigger and bigger and threw them in, and when I threw them in, they really splashed and covered the walk with water. Some even splashed on me. It was fun. And I did not see the old man in black robes coming up the path. He came up to the pool just as I threw the biggest rock. It splashed all over him. I knew I was in trouble because he was my mom's teacher. But he just laughed and said, "You like throwing rocks? I do too." And he picked up a rock and threw it into the pool. And then he laughed and said, "What's your name?" I thought, oh boy, here we go. I Tenzin Soto Brown, I said. He said, "The Dalai Lama is named Tenzin, too. And this is a Soto Zen Center. Is your mom here?" Yeah, and then it hit me. Mom is really, really going to be mad. So I started apologizing for getting him wet, but the monk said it was okay. Then he asked me to come to the side of the pool. And he handed me a big rock. "Tenzin, I want you to throw that rock into the pool and pay very close attention to what happens to the rock." "Okay," I said. I threw the rock and it made a big splash, lots of ripples, and a little bitty droplet came up to the top. "What'd you see?" I told him. Then he asked me, "What happened to the rock?" "It sank," I said. I mean, it's a rock, and rocks sink. But I didn't say that to him. I mean, after all, he was Mom's teacher. "I guess we ought to get those rocks out of the water, don't you think?" the monk asked. And then he took his sandals off and folded his robe and got into the pool. I couldn't believe it. He started getting rocks that I had thrown in and handing them to me. "You arrange the rocks the way you think they should be, Tenzin. Pay attention to how they look. Each rock belongs and each has a place," he said. It was really interesting to look at each rock and decide where it should go. I almost forgot about the time and forgot that Mom's teacher was standing in water because of me. After a while, all the main rocks were out of the pool, and the monk got out and was handing me more rocks, and just then my mom came out and started yelling, and when she saw me and the wet monk, "Tenzin, what are you doing? What have you done?" she yelled. And the monk put his hands together and bowed, and she got quiet and bowed back. Even Daddy can't stop her when she is mad. But the monk did it by just bowing. He is helping us create a new rock landscape around this pool. Don't you think it looks good? We've washed all the rocks off. But we didn't finish. Tenzin needs to come back. Plus, we have a meditation garden that needs work. He winked at me, and then I realized it was like when I threw rocks and hit Mr. Snyder's window. I was going to have to rake leaves or something. Well, it would give me something to do when my mom came back next week. On the way home, I told Mom the monk was a fun guy. He likes to throw rocks in the water too. And while you were sitting, he got in the water himself and to get out the rock to arrange around the pool. I said, "I had fun. That monk is really smart. Let's go back next week," I said, even though I knew I was going to have to rake or weed or carry trash or something. When we got home, Mom decided to let me have a popsicle. I was surprised because she only does that when I have been really nice. That's the first of a whole bunch of stories that are going to be. He always is getting in trouble. I will read 2 poems. This is a poem that is kind of a scientific poem based on entropy and dark matter and all that kind of stuff. It's called Red Shift. Memories like galaxies recede into clouds of dark matter. The first time I kissed you now seems like just a trace, like droplets condensed in a chamber. No moist lips, no blouse, no fumbling and clutching, just the sense that it happened and was wonderful, whatever that meant then or even now. All I have known is receding, losing energy, becoming a part of the dark energy surrounding us, dissipating into the entropy of this life. Concepts once easily grasped slip into puzzlements. What comes out of the blue now rushes toward us, coming faster than we can manage or hold. Beyond is unknown darkness, matter, energy, clouds gathering into forms we might be or might have been in other dimensions than this. Just now, a rose bloomed for me that I planted years ago, but had not noticed until now. Yes, now. It is all I have, but cannot hold. You're still here in the house with me, preparing food, and I want to kiss you again to make the world spin. And since I'm on the love stories, this is one called Love Aches. Is it pain or is it just memory? When you left, the house groaned. Emptiness flinched, barely able to move. I remember how I ached when I first met you, not sure what you saw in me or if this wound would ever heal. Now, years later, infection makes my chest hurt. Heartache from yearning for more, for security, for relief from this tenderness that is both memory and fact. How to relieve you from your pain, now mine. How to keep love without its aches. This pain throbs always. It comes and goes, is sharp and dull. It cannot be numbered. You come and pain fades, except as memory and fear of the long absence surely coming. And now last, this is called New Song. I'm going to dedicate to Dave since he's always writing songs. For years, I believed that all I needed were new words for the tunes I knew. I kept revising, adding verses, inserting choruses, and singing louder. Nothing worked for long. Now, I do not even want to sing. My words would add to the crises I hear crashing all around me. What has happened to the songs that once made me want to dance, to grab you up and swing you high? The music I need must be new, nothing I have heard before. Today, I still myself and listen. At first, all I hear is my clenched heart, a rhythm and beat I have learned too well. But between my breaths, out of the emptying silence, I hear a sound like a small flute, finding its way in the air around me. Notes tracing a new tune, not yet encumbered with words. Just an unexpected song for the world. Let me hum it for you.
Cool. Pardon me.
This reminds me that it's a great time of year for flu shots.
What?
Flu shots. Flu shots are our friend.
Thank you, I enjoyed.
Our next reader is Tom Baker, a veteran of both Vietnam and these readings.
Hardback, all of you, this is great.
Very good.
And I seen I am legend, and I know what's gonna happen to all of you to get the flu shot. I don't want to shoot you, but I will.
Well, it was a measles shot that caused the problem.
Those of you who have been here, except the AWOL one, know that I'm reading from a piece called Memoirs of a Young Warrior Wannabe. And I started out with a lot of humor, and I'm trying to get it into Nam, where it won't be quite as humorous. But right now, I'm in advanced infantry training. I had qualified for OCS somehow, and thinking I was in a unit with others that were going to be officers. So I fired expert with the M60, the M14, the M14A2, which was a bipod weapon that fired automatic. Cool, but I never seen one in the Nam. We fired 50 cals, laws, 45s, and even a few 4.2 deuce mortars. We also practiced a movement called quick kill, which was used by many a grunt walking point on patrol. It was designed to teach you fast response to NVA who would walk out of the bush right in front of you, the quick or the dead. It was that simple. The instructors were hard but less threatening than the DIs from basic, and we got along pretty well. Since most of us were going to be second Louis and Nam, they pushed us but spent a lot of time explaining things. The commander of Alpha Company had been in the Battle of LZ X-Ray back in '67, and he had been shot up bad. He was mending well, but one day he tried to lead us in PT and had to be helped off the field. Our head DI took him aside, and a young E5 finished drilling us. Sadly, the captain was killed 2 years later in another firefight somewhere in the Central Highlands. He was a hell of a good guy. After 6 weeks of training, they gave us a weekend pass, and me and my two buddies headed towards a little town called Asbury Park. Yeah, the home of the boss, Bruce Springsteen, except he wasn't famous in '67. At least I'd never heard of him. Jerry Jambardino, my friend, was from Buffalo and had been to Asbury Park several times. He was our guide. Mike Bledsoe from Knoxville was like me, country come to town. But we had a great time. I met my first drunk priest it was, in a bar called the Shamrock Inn. We were bellied up to the fancy bar when an Italian wedding party burst through the door like a Roman legionnaire, led by a priest who was drunk as a hoot. We watched them dance and sing for a while, and I finally sauntered over to the priest and announced in my southern drawl, "I've never seen a drunk preacher before, sir." And being Southern Baptist, where we don't speak to each other in the liquor store, that was true. His dark eyes hardened for a second, then he must have realized where I was from and laughed loudly. "Well, son, the good Lord forgives us all our sins." With that said, he shuffled off into the crowd and eased out of the bar, and I eased out of the bar with Jambardino laughing at my side. Training picked up considerably in the next few weeks, and we ran everywhere singing, "I want to be an airborne ranger. Live that life of guts and danger." We were getting closer to our graduation in OCS. You probably remember me telling you about Mr. Murphy. Well, here is where he came riding back into my life in full charge. I had already set my wedding date 1 week into my 19th year and asked my father, who was a retired sergeant major, to help pin the second lieutenant bars on me. Well, guess what? Uncle Sam had other ideas. 3 days before our graduation from advanced infantry training, 2 weeks before our starting date for OCS, which we already had orders for in hand, General Westmoreland asked the Joint Chief to cancel all non-college graduates' orders for OCS. It would have been much simpler to just not cut any new orders. But no, old Westy and Uncle Sam wanted to screw 195 of the 200 soldiers without degrees. And they did. We didn't even have a graduation from AIT. It was so messed up, we just reverted to our original orders. Talk about pissed. My buddy Gerald Jambardino had 3 years of college and they allowed him to continue. He somehow managed to survive Nam without me by his side, but I've not seen him since. Airborne. I guess I'm just going to be an airborne ranger private. Getting married anyway and headed back to Fort Benning for jump school. I was 1 week into my 19th year. Talk about running. In jump school, you ran everywhere. You never walked. Walking was for non-airborne personnel called legs. Paratroopers ran. Most of us were 18 or 19 years old. There was a few older guys around 24, 25. But there was one old Air Force tech sergeant who was ancient. He was 32. Day one, we ran 5 miles first thing every morning before chow. First day out, this old sergeant was struggling to keep up. I thought that he might actually fall out of formation and thus jump school. So me and my buddy, Mike Bledsoe, eased up either side of him, grabbed him under the arms, and half carried him along. The lead drill instructor, Sergeant Moore, who I would meet later in Nam, and then again at NCO Academy, ran up and started to say something to us, but stopped and just watched. Half a mile or so later, other guys moved in to relieve Bledsoe and me. After another mile, the tech sergeant caught his breath, second wind, and he was able to finish a run. A band of brothers. By the second week of jump school and running become easier, the singing, "What a Hell of a Way to Die," to the theme of "Glory, Glory, Hallelujah," become louder and the bonds between the troops become stronger. One sad but funny note occurred during the second week of training called Tower Week. A Yankee from upstate New York had gone out and gotten himself an airborne tattoo, "Death from Above," before he went to jump school. Wrong. The drill instructors jumped all over him like stink on shit. Mr. Airborne, they called him, and he had to do twice what the rest of us did in PT. They rode him hard, but to his credit, he withstood all the abuse until the third week, jump week, our first airplane jump. That day, the jump master had stuck him second in our stick, or line. He was 2 people in front of me as we shuffled to the door. The man in the door was usually an officer, and today was no exception. Mr. Airborne was right behind him. We went through the ritual of the parachute jump, stand up, hook up, equipment check, stand in the door. A few seconds later, the jump light turned from red to green, and the jump master shouted, "Go!" Tapping the lieutenant on the shoulder. Out the door he went. Next in line was Mr. Airborne, who moved into the jump position, but stopped. There is no room for hesitation here. The jump master shouted, "Go!" again, and shoved Mr. Airborne out the door. But Mr. Airborne didn't want to go out that door. He managed to grab the side of the jump door as he went out. Wrong again. The prop blast slammed his body hard up against the fuselage of the C-119. Blam, blam. We heard him hit the side of the plane a couple of times before the jump master calmly reached down and pried his finger off the door. Away he went. A heartbeat later, the stick began to move forward, and before I knew it, I was floating in the hot air over Georgia, 1,250 feet above drop zone Bastogne. As I floated down, I remember seeing the MP vehicle moving towards where Mr. Airborne, whose chute had opened just fine, had landed. He was okay, but I never saw him again. The next day dawned early, and soon after doing 5 miles, we got a pep talk from our DI about running off the airfield, before running off to the airport. There was no talk of Mr. Airborne's episode as we suited up for jump number 2. C-130s were ready as we shuffled inside. One thing the instructor failed to explain to us, and there were many talks, was that sometimes in a mass jump, 200 people in the air at the same time, a paratrooper will float under your chute very close, and his chute will steal the air from your chute. Your chute may not fully collapse, but it will lose air and you will fall fast. Well, as luck would have it, or Mr. Murphy maybe, my buddy Jambardino's chute drifted under mine soon after we exited the aircraft, and down I went to land atop his chute. I was knee-deep in silk, as they call it. Jambardino could see my legs poking into his canopy, and he's screaming his head off, "Get off my damn chute, get off!" Thankfully, I didn't panic and managed to walk off silk. As my chute stayed partially inflated, I slid off the edge of Jambardino's chute, didn't get hung up in his suspension lines, and floated off to the side. He looked over at me and shouted, "You asshole." All I could do was sort of shrug my shoulders and smile. I bought him a beer that night and was forgiving. 3 days and 3 jumps later, I stood in formation with 190 other paratroopers as the company commander pinned jump wings on my chest. Airborne. I was getting closer to my goal.
It's really harrowing when you think how long it takes me to jump off the rock on the Tuckasegee. Our next reader is Andrew Barenfeld. He has been here once before. He is a proto teacher. He is going into our public schools.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
So my last time here, I read a poem by Pablo Neruda, and without really realizing how this whole thing goes, I've decided to do something completely different, and instead I will be reading a poem by Allen Ginsberg.
Yay! He was in the first music video.
Rebel. What thoughts I have of you tonight, Walt Whitman. For I walked down the side streets under the trees with a headache of self-conscious looking at the full moon. In my hungry fatigue and shopping for images, I went into the neon fruit supermarket dreaming of your enumerations. What peaches, what penumbras. Whole families shopping at night, aisles full of husbands, wives in the avocados, babies in the tomatoes. And you, Garcia Lorca, what were you doing down by the watermelons? I saw you, Walt Whitman, childless, lonely old Gruber, poking among the meats in the refrigerator, eyeing the grocery boys. I heard you asking questions of each. Who killed the pork chops? What price bananas? Are you my angel? I wandered in and out of the brilliant stacks of cans, following you, and followed in my imagination by the store detective. We strode down the open corridors together in our solitary, fancy-tasting artichokes, possessing every frozen delicacy and never passing the cashier. Where are we going, Walt Whitman? The doors close in an hour. But which way does your beard point tonight? I touch your book and dream of our odyssey in the supermarket and just feel absurd. Will we walk all night through the solitary streets? The trees add shade to shade. Lights out in the houses, we'll both be lonely. We'll stroll dreaming of the lost America, of long past blue automobiles and driveways, home to our silent cottage. Ah, dear Father Graybeard, lonely old courage teacher, what America did you have when Sharon quit poling his ferry and you go out on a smoking bank and stood watching the boat just disappear onto the black waters of Lee?
Oh.
Thank
Thank you. Yeah. Our next reader is Zoe Zander, also a proto teacher. And there are some number of not that
Okay, so this is a work in progress that might never really be finished, but I just want to warn you, it doesn't have a beginning and it doesn't have an end, so it's just the middle. But basically, I have a really bad memory. I've never been able to remember things really well. I don't remember like a ton of my childhood. Ages 6 to 12 are all just like one whole year. So, but I know that I've heard before that smells are really connected to memory. So this is a poem of a collection of smells. It starts with the word because, and I'm going to ask my 2 writing professors in here not to harm me for that. Because my dad always smelled like shaving cream and liquid latex and baby powder in the morning's first pot of coffee. Because my mom always smelled like old leather and her favorite discontinued perfume that she could never find anymore. because Oma and Opa smelled like their car, which smelled like their couch, which smelled like shiny upholstered cigarette smoke and fresh air and crisp glass. Because Nana smelled like her condo, which smelled like dried flowers and expensive soap and white walls we weren't supposed to touch. Because home smells so much differently than it used to, like colored pencils and nail polish and wood. Mom's place smells like spices and unused rooms, and Dad's smells like the dogs and suddenly a roll of gray tea. Because in high school, I must have smelled like desperation and hope and salsa and Trident gum, and in the summer, I smelled like campfires and dirt and wooden bunk beds and fun. Because my car smells like whoever used to own it, mixed with everything I've spilled on the floor, and my room smells like the clothes that don't look dirty so aren't dirty, and loose makeup and half-finished homework or green tea or anything. Because my sister smells like solidarity and hair products and Friday nights when we used to share a bed. Because my last 2 boyfriends smelled so differently, and the one who broke my heart smelled like skin and simplicity and hazy reality, and a single pair of sheets I dared not wonder how many girls I might be sharing with. But the other smelled like his house, which smelled like his mom. Because my best friend smells like boundless comfort and paper that's been in your backpack for weeks, that's almost lost its crisp smell but not quite. And my love smells like being woken up by sunshine instead of an alarm, and certainty, and something else I can't name, in the same way I don't know my own scent.
Wow. Yay! Yay!
Thank you, Zoe. I'm adjured to let you all know that you are being recorded. If you don't want yourself broadcast onto the wider world, tell Avram he will not broadcast. You are safe, but you need to tell him.
You don't want?
No, I'm just saying rock on.
Right, rock on.
So more time for me then.
Our next reader is Gary Carden, whom I hesitate to call the Prince of Dark Corners, but who is a storyteller long known in the region.
This is called a dramatic entrance. I'm gonna read you a book review. How's that for a change? I've been reviewing books now 23 years. That's a long time. And the thing I've noticed is that there are certain types of books that appeal to me now, particularly for the last 10 years in particular. And that's memoirs and those that deal with Appalachian life and Appalachian culture. At the same time, it's a little depressing to note that in a 50-mile radius of Sylva, there's probably 100 memoirs. I've never seen the beat. Everybody has to write a memoir, and some of them are tragically bad, you know, really. But we do have a couple of people in the immediate area that can do a memoir, you know, smiling, like Lloyd Cowan. What, Lloyd, that's his brother, what's his?
Leo.
Leo. That's a beautiful, he did a beautiful book and so on and so forth. Well, that's the type of book that I really love. It's one that deals with mountain culture. And it's nostalgic, you know, deals with the past in some memorable way. Well, I've slowed down a whole lot. I used to write a book review in 2 days, and now it took me 3 weeks to write this one. I'm a lot slower. I forget what I'm doing sometimes. This is a strange little book that I just picked up by accident called Running on Red Dog Road. Running on Red Dog Road. And it's written by a little woman in her 90s that lives in Florida now, and it deals just with one tiny little aspect of her life, which was 5 years during World War II. And she has a memory like Velcro. I've never seen anything like it, you know. Things just stick to her. This is done, as they usually are, by some press you've never heard of, you know. This one is Zuderman Press, Grand Rapids. Costs $15.99. You can go straight out here to the
desk and order it now. I use this to introduce it. Might be familiar to a lot of you. A little poem. Backward, turn backward, O time, in thy flight. Make me a child again, just for tonight. Mother, come back from that echoless shore. Take me again to your heart as of yore. I like bad poetry. That's bad poetry in case you don't know. The academics assure us that's a bad poetry. That's my kind of poem. This woman's name, I love her name, is Dreama Hall Burkmeyer. She is the author of a nostalgic memoir that has a remarkable ability to vividly recall her childhood in West Virginia coal mining camp called West Beckley. I was pleased to note that Dreama's memory has much in common with my own Appalachian childhood. For example, at the age of 5, she remembers the entire family gathering around their Philco radio on Sunday night, listening to Jack Benny and Rochester. I did that. Dreama's most vivid memories take place during World War II, and she gives an impressive catalog of images from that time. The little Esso station within walking distance that sold gas for 12 cents a gallon had a drink box in the corner that was packed with grapettes and orange crush, all at the end of the Red Dog Road. Now, most of Dreama's childhood is spent with her grandparents. And since her father had been killed in a mining accident during the war, Dreama's mother, like thousands of other young wives, went off to Norfolk, Virginia to be Rosie the Riveter. As a result, Dreama and her sister Bonnie and her deaf brother, Percy, come to live with their grandparents. It is in this household that Dreama hears her grandmother give the same stern instructions every time Dreama ventures out of the front yard. Don't you go running down Red Dog Road. It was good advice. Now, as Dreama explains, Red Dog is the worthless, multicolored, sharp-edged shale that is a product of coal mining, and it's just all over the place. And it's what is left when coal is burned. And the roads in West Virginia are almost paved with them. It's everywhere you look, there it is. Much of this material ends up on the surface of the road, where it proves to be a hazard to children who run and play there. And since Dreama is a willful, heedless child with an overly active imagination, this is all a blessing, but you wouldn't know it when she was a child. She frequently runs on that road, and she frequently falls. She often comes home with scraped and bleeding knees and colorful stories about her adventures on the Red Dog Road. But West Virginia is like Flannery O'Connor's Georgia. It's Jesus haunted. And the grandmother's house, God's approval and disapproval enters into every aspect of this poor little girl's life. She's 5 years old. The majority of this book, she's 5 years old. In addition to the fact that Dreama's grandfather is a popular self-ordained minister, every family activity is analyzed and judged, including poor Dreama's clothing, her taste in music, and the movies that she wants to go see. Each item is subjected to God's and her grandmother's harsh judgment. And in a household where heck, H-E-C-K, is considered a profane expression, Dreama gradually learns how to break the rules and remain in her grandmother's good graces. As a consequence, most of Dreama's adventures on the Red Dog Road are guilty secrets that she must harbor. While singing Blessed Assurance in church with her grandmother, she secretly memorizes the words to zippity-doo-dah. When her grandfather becomes seriously ill, she accompanies her grandmother to buy Hadacol, which seems to relieve the old man's pain. However, when the government forces Hadacol to the manufacturers to admit that the medicine is 12% alcohol, Dreama's grandparents are forced to face the fact that the old man has unwittingly become an alcoholic. The family suffers a disappointment then, and it undermines their stubborn adherence to God's will, and they feel betrayed. When the grandfather's death occurs, this tightly woven fabric of a family begins to unravel. Running on Red Dog Road is a marvelous blend of nostalgia for a lost past and a joyful and humorous account of a young girl's adventures in West Virginia in a coal mining camp during World War II. The book is filled with the details of a forgotten era, such as Air Force raids, in West Virginia. Rationing, the excitement of receiving a Sparkle Plenty doll. I had one. I know I'm a boy, but I had a Sparkle Plenty doll. You know where they come from? Dick Tracy. You know, he had two characters. That was B.O. Plenty and Gravel Gertie. They got married and had a kid they named Sparkle Plenty. When Dreama takes a grocery list to the store that has been approved by her grandmother, the list contains items such as Goody's headache powder, Ipana toothpaste, Clabber Girl baking powder. Dreama assists her grandmother, who is a master cook, in preparing stack cake. My grandmother did the same thing. Leather bridges, banana pudding, and cherry cobbler. The author plays records on a wind-up Victrola, and she recalls her aunt's membership in the Lonely Hearts Club, which is a pen club that results in visits from a series of potential boyfriends or husbands who all have their hair slicked down with real cream hair oil. Dreama listens to Gabriel Heater. I don't remember him, but he's a radio announcer on the radio, and everybody in West Virginia listened to him when things were bad because his program had only good news. To please her grandmother, Dreama takes piano lessons and learns to play Clair de Lune. But especially memorable is Dreama's visits to a gypsy camp, which sets up outside West Beckley one summer. I don't know whether you knew this, but they came to Sylva. It was 1944. I was riding my bicycle, and there they were in Mark Watson Field. There, you know, it's summer, school was out, and there was the gypsy camp. And it stunned me. Well, it stunned this little girl here. I have a similar memory of a gypsy camp in Sylva, searched in 1944. For a language and music, and she listens to unfamiliar language and music, and she senses that she has encountered something totally alien to the world she lives in. It is something that inhabits the land of old maps that are inscribed, "Here there be tigers." She also senses a kinship with these people who exist as outsiders. Although running on Red Dog Road comes down to the present, The majority of this book deals with World War II era and Dreamer's life from the age of 5 till she is 11. The conclusion follows Dreamer's grandmother to Florida, where she lived several decades more in a household that continues to adhere to her dictates. Dreamer, however, has become a citizen of the world, and she still considers her life today in Berkeley as a time of joy and adventure.
So Dreamer will be glad to hear it. A good review is always wonderful. Our final reader is Wanda Mills, also a veteran of these readings.
You said that you wanted children, but you did not want to be. Your name is Abram or Albert? Abram.
Abram.
I bought the back out of the hardwood and right down the driveway going to work. I sat a few minutes watching the red roses. It had the double room that is open. That room has been my mother's choice. Sacred. The river of mother and dad playing free along the edge of the yard and measuring the distance for each one 4 miles to my house. Rolling my foot turned back into the kitchen. I noticed Daddy had literally that the breakfast dishes on the counter. I decided to wash this for that. The old thing was too high for me to reach the sausage from my chair. I rolled up to the sink and put the weight on my chest and pulled my body to the edge of the chair. Quickly, I tried to gain myself as I pulled up the stand on my hip of women people. Okay. You live only one and the basement high school. I only one and carefully ease myself back into the chair. Just not get back in the chair. I only knock at the back door. Hurry to the door. I saw my neighbor motion a man. We have we have a couple hours catching up on the red with a herd that will help us. What did I watch? She said she had to run errands before she picked her load up at school. After she left, I went back in the dishes. Of course, after 2 hours, the dishwater was cold. Once again, I helped to the sink and pulled myself up to turn the water on. Just as I turned the hot water tap, I lost my balance and fell to the floor, and the chair rolled backwards. The sink was already half of water, and it boiled along before water and was coming over the edge of the sink like a waterfall. Lying on the floor with my face toward the door, I tried to reach my chest, but it wasn't within my reach. Wheeling my body over the wet floor like a black water snake. I was finally able to reach my wheelchair. Then, when I fell, my arm had hit the brakes and the chair rolled away the second time. By this time, I was wet, cold, and hot, and the water was running through the kitchen and to the living room like a shower creek. After chasing the chair around in the circle, I was able to pin the chair between the table and the sink. get out of the floor into my wheelchair has never been easy to do. The floor been wet and hard made it even harder and longer to get at. Putting my arm around the arm of the chair, I tried several times to pull my upper body up onto the regular seat. However, my wet clothes got to the seat and I couldn't pull my hips far enough on the seat to sit at. I was dangling with my back on the seat of the wheelchair, my hand on the handle, and my leg waving in the air. I was trying to put my feet on the floor. Face in the water was still hot. I was also afraid that I might fall back into the wet floor. Finally, I was able to wrap my legs around the table leg like a great line clinging to the tree and push myself into the seat of the chair. It had taken me almost 4 hours to get to the floor back into the chair. By that time, the water was running from the kitchen into both the living room and the hallway. Using my wheelchair as a canoe, I paddled the floating hall and called my neighbors. The gentleman turned the water off and began to mop up the water. Why helped me change into dry clothes. That was many years ago, and there's still water marks on my hardwood floor. Needless to say, it was a long time. But I wanted it.
What a story! Woo!
That sounded oddly similar.
I believe that wraps us up for tonight. Our next date is December 15th. For those whose families are not yet in town, those who wish to escape their families, whatever it takes, December 15th.